A 28-year-old combat sports champion challenged a 68-year-old Chinese restaurant cook, then discovered why Bruce Lee himself refused to spar against masters of Dim Mak pressure points. Welcome back to Tales of Wonder. If you enjoy stories about karma, unexpected twists, and moments where bullies get exactly what they deserve, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that'll make you think twice about judging a book by its cover. Now, let's begin today's story. The Golden Lotus Chinese restaurant sat wedged between a CrossFit gym and a protein supplement store on Fletcher Avenue in Tampa, Florida. For 23 years, the same faded red awning had sheltered customers seeking authentic Cantonese cuisine, and for those same 23 years, Master Chong Wen had worked the wok station in the back kitchen. At 68 years old, Chong stood exactly 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed perhaps 152 pounds after a large meal. His face carried the deep lines of 7 decades, and his hands, perpetually scented with garlic and ginger, moved with the practiced economy of someone who chopped 50,000 chickens and folded twice as many wontons. To the lunch crowd of construction workers and office employees, he was simply the old cook, the quiet man who occasionally emerged from the kitchen to refill tea, always with a slight bow of acknowledgement. What they didn't know, what nobody knew except his daughter, who managed the front counter, was that those same weathered hands had once been registered with the Hong Kong Martial Arts Federation as lethal weapons. Next door, the Iron Temple Gym attracted a different demographic entirely. 28-year-old Danton, the Damage, Morrison ruled that space like personal territory. At 6 feet 2 inches and 225 pounds of Instagram-ready muscle mass, Danton had compiled a 12-3 record in regional MMA competitions and accumulated 340,000 followers on social media by posting knockout compilation videos with titles like Destroying Doubters and Making Grown Men Cry. His coaching method relied heavily on intimidation. His philosophy, shared in dozens of motivational posts, boiled down to weakness is a choice. Domination is a lifestyle. The problems began on a Tuesday in late September, specifically at 1:47 p.m., when Chong stepped outside for his daily practice. For precisely 30 minutes every afternoon, Chong performed a Tai Chi routine in the narrow alley behind the restaurant. The movements looked like slow-motion dance to anyone watching. Gentle spirals, weight shifting from foot to foot, hands tracing invisible patterns through the humid Florida air. Danton had noticed this ritual during his 3rd week at the gym. He'd pointed it out to his training partner, filming a quick video through the gym's back window. "Check out Grandpa doing his bedtime stretches," he narrated, posting it with laughing emojis. The clip got 43,000 views. That should have been the end of it. But Danton had tasted the engagement metrics, and his algorithm demanded more content. By the 2nd week of October, Danton's commentary had become routine. He'd position himself at the gym's rear exit during Chong's practice, phone in hand, providing running mockery for his followers. Day 7 of watching the Ancient One commune with invisible spirits, he'd announce. "Still moving slower than my grandmother." Chong never acknowledged the camera, never turned his head. His eyes remained focused on the precise angle of his wrist, the rooting of his stance, the breath moving through his center. The restaurant staff noticed, though. Maria, the waitress who'd worked there for 11 years, mentioned it to Chong's daughter, Lin. "That gym guy is harassing your father." Lin had approached her father that evening after closing. "Bah, the man next door." Chong had raised one hand, gentle but final. "He is young. He does not understand. This is not a problem." But it was about to become one. The harassment intensified systematically over the next 4 weeks. Week 3 brought physical proximity. Danton started timing his cool-down walks to coincide with Chong's practice, pacing circles around the older man while live streaming. "Folks, I'm trying to understand the combat application here. Is he fighting an invisible opponent? Is this what they did before actual martial arts were invented?" His followers ate it up. The videos were getting 80,000 to 120,000 views each. Brands were reaching out about sponsorships. Chong continued his forms. His daughter had begged him twice more to either practice inside or file a complaint. Each time, he'd simply smiled. Let him have his fun. Word are just sounds. They cannot touch what is real. Week 4 introduced the gym's clients to the entertainment. Danton began inviting his training partners to watch, creating an audience. 5, then 8, then a dozen young men, most between 22 and 35, would lean against the gym's back wall during Chong's practice, commenting, occasionally applauding ironically when Chong completed a particularly slow movement. The old cook's expression never changed. His breathing remained even. His forms continued with the same deliberate precision, weight sinking into the front foot, spine aligning, palm pressing forward through space, as if moving through water. On October 31st, Danton escalated to a physical invasion of space. He began positioning himself directly in Chong's path during the forms, forcing the older man to adjust his movements to avoid collision. When Chong would shift to practice in a different section of the alley, Danton would follow, maintaining himself as an obstacle, narrating the whole time. Now he's retreating. Classic defensive mindset. This is why traditional martial arts don't work in real combat, folks. Chong adapted silently. If Danton blocked the eastern portion of the alley, Chong practiced in the western portion. If Danton invaded that space, Chong would make his movements smaller, more compact. Never a word of complaint. Never a glance of annoyance. But something had shifted in his eyes, a quality that his daughter recognized from the single photograph she'd seen of her father at age 32, standing beside his Sifu in the courtyard of the Shaolin Temple's Guangzhou branch. The breaking point came on November 14th at exactly 2:03 p.m. Danton, emboldened by 11 consecutive days of successful content and now accompanied by 7 of his training partners, decided to test the old man's Tai Chi. The livestream was titled, "Can Ancient Chinese Martial Arts Actually Work?" Let's find out. He approached Chong mid-form, phone camera capturing everything. "Hey, Grandpa, I got a question for you." When Chong didn't respond, simply transitioning into a different posture, Danton stepped closer. "I'm talking to you, old man. All this dancing you do, does any of it actually work against a real fighter?" Chong completed his movement, a slow arc of the arms that ended with both palms facing forward at chest height. Then, for the first time in 7 weeks, he acknowledged Danton's presence. He turned his head, made eye contact, and spoke in accented but clear English. "It is not meant for fighting. It is meant for understanding." Danton laughed, playing his phone camera. "Understanding? Brother, combat is about domination. It's about imposing your will. It's about—" He reached out and poked Chong's shoulder with his index finger. Not hard, just enough to demonstrate power dynamics. Just enough to show his audience who was in control, making sure everyone knows who's the alpha. The finger touched Chong's shoulder a second time. That's when everything changed. Chong's right hand moved. Not fast, at least not in the way Danton understood speed. There was no wind-up, no telegraphing, no chambering of power. The hand simply appeared where Danton's extended arm was, and Danton's finger was suddenly pointing in a direction fingers aren't designed to point. The pain was instantaneous and completely disorienting. Danton's knees buckled, not from fear, but from a neural response he had no framework to process. His phone clattered to the asphalt. Chong had applied what traditional martial artists call a Chin Na joint lock, specifically a variation known as small wrap hand, a technique that isolates the first knuckle of the index finger while simultaneously applying pressure to the radial nerve cluster of the wrist. The entire manipulation covered perhaps 4 inches of movement and had taken 0.8 seconds from initiation to completion. Danton tried to pull back. His 225 pounds of muscle mass achieved absolutely nothing. The old man's grip, light, almost gentle in appearance, had turned Danton's arm into a lever with the fulcrum at a joint never meant to bend that direction. "Please," Chong said quietly, "do not resist. You will damage your ligament." One of Danton's training partners lunged forward. "Yo, let him." Chong's left hand rose in a stopping gesture, palm out. The man froze mid-step, not from intimidation, but from something in Chong's eyes that suddenly made him remember every Bruce Lee movie he'd ever watched and wonder if maybe, possibly, they weren't entirely fiction. "Your friend is not hurt," Chong continued, his tone conversational, almost professorial. "I am simply demonstrating a principle. In Wing Chun, we call this Chi Sao, sticky hands. Once contact is made, the superior position is not about strength. It is about structure and angle." He shifted his grip fractionally. Danton gasped, a sound his social media followers would later replay 2.3 million times. "You see, young man, when you touched my shoulder, you gave me a bridge. In traditional Chinese martial arts, we do not block force with force. We redirect. We control the point of contact." Chong's voice remained calm, almost kind. "Bruce Lee, who you may have heard of, studied under Ip Man, the same lineage I trained in for 34 years before coming to America. Bruce Lee once told a reporter that he would spar with anyone, except masters of Dim Mak." Danton's face had gone pale. "Dim what?" "Pressure point manipulation." Chong explained. Though the movies make it very dramatic, one touch and you die, yes? This is an exaggeration, but the principle is real. The human body has 108 major pressure points along the meridian channels. 36 of these points, when struck or pressed in the correct sequence, can disrupt nerve function, blood flow, or muscular control. He released the joint lock, but immediately touched two fingers to a point on Danton's inner wrist, the Nei Guan point, located 2 finger widths from the wrist crease. Danton's hand went instantly numb. You see? No mystical power, just anatomy, just knowledge that is 2,000 years old, passed from teacher to student. Chong removed his fingers, and sensation gradually returned to Danton's hand. I studied this art at the Shaolin Temple in Guangzhou from age 14 to 28. My Sifu was Master Wang Keiying, 5th-generation disciple of the Southern Shaolin tradition. After my training, I served 7 years in the Hong Kong police force, where I was required to register my martial arts certification with the government. He took a small step back, giving Danton space. Then I came to America, and I cooked food. Cooking also requires precision, timing, and an understanding of how elements combine. Not so different, actually. Maria, the waitress, had come out the restaurant's back door and was recording on her phone. Not for social media, but as evidence in case things escalated further. But there was nothing aggressive in Chong's demeanor. He simply stood there, hands relaxed at his sides, while Danton cradled his wrist and stared at the old man, as if seeing him for the first time. The technique Bruce Lee feared, Chong continued, was not one technique. It was the understanding that speed and strength mean nothing against someone who can read your body before you move. We call this Tingjin, listening energy. Your body told me you would poke my shoulder 1.2 seconds before you did it. Your weight shifted. Your shoulder dropped. Your breathing changed. He gestured to the alley around them. This is why I practice slowly. Not because I cannot move fast. At 68, I'm not as fast as I was true. But slow practice teaches the body to move correctly. When you need speed, it is already there underneath. Like water, it appears soft, but it can cut through stone given time and correct application. Danton's 7 training partners stood frozen, their worldview quietly recalibrating. The immediate aftermath unfolded across 3 platforms simultaneously. Danton's abandoned phone, still live streaming from the asphalt, had captured everything. The video would be viewed 8.7 million times in the first 48 hours. The comments section became a battlefield between those who insisted it was staged and those who recognized legitimate technique when they saw it. Maria's recording, posted to the community Facebook group, reached every business owner on Fletcher Avenue within 6 hours. The narrative shifted from old man harassed by Jim Bro to secret Kung Fu master humbles bully. But the most significant consequence happened in the alley itself, in the 11 minutes after Chong's demonstration. Danton sat on the ground, back against the gym's wall, still processing what had happened. His training partners had dispersed, some back to the gym, others simply leaving. Nobody wanted to be associated with footage that was already on its way to virality. Chong had returned to his practice, but after 2 forms, he walked over and sat down beside Danton. Not close enough to be invasive, but close enough to talk. You are skilled, Chong said. I have watched you through the window. Your grappling technique is good. You understand leverage. Danton looked at him, confused and wary. But you have made a mistake that many young fighters make, Chong continued. You believe combat is about dominance, about making others submit. This creates many victories, yes, but no wisdom. He paused. You are 28? Yeah, Danton muttered. I began teaching at 29. Students would come wanting to learn how to defeat enemies. I would tell them, the highest achievement in martial arts is that you never need to use them. They would leave, thinking me weak. But a few, maybe 1 in 20, would understand. Danton was quiet for a long moment. Then, why didn't you hurt me? You could have broken my finger, or whatever those pressure points do. Because you're not my enemy, Chong said simply. You are a young man, trying to build identity through strength. I understand this. I was the same once. But strength without discipline is just violence waiting for an excuse. He stood, his knees creaking slightly, a reminder that 68 years come with their costs. My daughter would like me to press charges for harassment. She has documented 7 weeks of your videos. But I think perhaps you have learned something today, yes? Danton nodded slowly. Then we are finished. You continue your path. I continue mine. Chong started walking back toward the restaurant, then paused. But if you wish to understand what you felt today, the structure, the angles, the listening energy, my door is open. I teach on Saturdays at 9 a.m. in the community center on Morrison Street. No charge, just respect. The following Monday, the Golden Lotus was busier than it had been in 5 years. Customers who'd seen the videos came to catch a glimpse of the secret master. Chong continued cooking, occasionally emerging to refill tea with the same slight bow of acknowledgement. The Iron Temple gym lost 40% of its membership within 2 weeks. Danton's sponsors pulled out. His Instagram following dropped to 180,000 as he deleted all the mocking videos. But something else happened. 3 of Danton's former training partners showed up at the Morrison Street Community Center that first Saturday. Then Danton himself appeared the following week, standing awkwardly in the back of the room, while Chong led a dozen students through the basic stance work of Wing Chun. By December, the class had grown to 23 students. Danton attended every session, saying little, but his movements began to change. Less force, more attention to structure. The restaurant's Yelp reviews suddenly included comments about the legendary Kung Fu master cook and requests to meet him. Chong ignored this, but Lin noticed her father had started wearing the simple black jacket his Sifu had given him 40 years ago, the one embroidered with the Shaolin Temple symbol on the breast pocket. And on Fletcher Avenue, the dynamic had shifted. The gym guys who still trained at Iron Temple would nod respectfully when passing Chong on the street. The old cook, whom they dismissed as irrelevant, had reminded them that some knowledge can't be measured in bench press numbers or follower counts. 6 months later, in April, Danton Morrison posted a video titled "The Hardest Lesson I Ever Learned." It wasn't a knockout compilation. It was 14 minutes of him explaining, in detail, what had happened in that alley. Not the physical technique, but the psychological shift. "I thought dominance was strength," he told his now 290,000 followers, many of them new subscribers who'd found him through the viral video. "But I was confusing fear with respect. Master Chong didn't need to dominate me. He didn't need to prove anything. He just existed at a level I didn't know was possible." The video ended with footage of Danton performing a Wing Chun form. Not perfectly, but with genuine focus. "I'm starting over," he said to the camera, "learning from the beginning. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. But for the first time, I'm training to become better, not to make someone else worse." The comment that went viral within that video came from an account called at IPMN Lineage. Chong Wen was the youngest student accepted to Wong Ke-ying's inner circle. Wong Ke-ying sparred with Bruce Lee in 1963 Hong Kong tournament. Bruce Lee refused a second match, saying Wong's knowledge of pressure points was too dangerous for sports competition. Chong Wen was Wong's final student before Wong's death. "We thought this lineage was lost. Good to see it lives on in America." The video accumulated 3.2 million views. Major martial arts publications reached out for interviews. A documentary crew from Hong Kong contacted the restaurant. Chong declined all interviews, but he expanded his Saturday class to include Wednesday evenings and started teaching a specialized seminar on pressure point theory once a month. Students came from as far away as California and New York. Danton became an assistant instructor, his role primarily to demonstrate what modern MMA fighters would do, so Chong could show traditional counters. The dynamic worked. Students got to see the bridge between contemporary combat sports and classical kung fu. On the 1-year anniversary of the alley incident, the Golden Lotus hosted a celebration. Chong's Saturday students prepared a demonstration. Danton, now sporting a white sash that marked him as a beginning student of the traditional system, performed the Shu Nim Tao form, the first form of Wing Chun, the foundation of everything. His movements were still rough, still carried the stiffness of someone relearning how their body should move. But when he finished and bowed to his teacher, there was genuine respect in the gesture. Chong bowed back, a teacher acknowledging a student's progress. The small crowd applauded. Someone posted a video to TikTok with the caption, "From bully to student, the Danton Morrison redemption arc." It got 6.4 million views. But the real story, the one that mattered to the 23 regular students and the old cook who taught them, wasn't captured on social media. It was in the quiet moments before class started, when Danton would arrive 20 minutes early to help Chong set up the folding chairs, and they would talk about structure, about breathing, about the difference between performing strength and embodying it. "You know what the real secret is?" Chong said one Saturday morning as they arranged the practice space. The one Bruce Lee understood, even though reporters made him sound mystical. Danton waited. "It is not about the technique. It is not about pressure points or speed or even 34 years of practice. Chong tapped his chest over his heart. It is about being so comfortable with who you are that you need to prove nothing to anyone. That is the technique Bruce Lee feared, not Dim Mak. The technique of complete self-knowledge. Because against that, there is no defense. You cannot intimidate someone who knows exactly who they are. He smiled at Danton. You're learning this now. Slowly, like Tai Chi. But you're learning. Outside, Fletcher Avenue continued its daily rhythm. The gym still operated. The restaurant still served lunch specials. But something had changed in that space between the two buildings. A small patch of alley where an old man practiced forms, and where, for 7 weeks, someone had mistaken patience for weakness. The technique Bruce Lee feared wasn't a martial arts move at all. It was the quiet certainty of a master who had nothing left to prove. Have you ever dismissed someone as irrelevant because of their age or appearance, only to discover they possessed knowledge and skills far beyond what you imagined possible? If this story made you reconsider what real strength looks like, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who need to hear these messages. Drop a comment below sharing a time when someone surprised you by being far more than they initially seemed, or tell us about an older person in your life who taught you something invaluable. And definitely subscribe and turn on notifications, because we've got more stories coming that'll challenge you to see beyond the surface of people and situations. Thanks for watching, and remember, the quietest person in the room is often the one who has already proven everything they needed to prove. See you in the next video.